Welcome to Soundbites. I'm Alex Melshine, and today we're taping in Detroit, Michigan. I'm joined by Dan Nelson of Nelson Property Management. Welcome.
Well,
Thanks for joining us today. So I get calls because I'm based out of Ann Arbor, Michigan, from potential investors all the time who want to invest in student properties or generally just in properties in Southeast Michigan because we are a lower price range market than your Californias, New Yorks,
Correct.
Floridas.
The coastlines.
Exactly. So how do you take that phone call when somebody says, Dan, I want to invest in real estate. Tell me more about your market and tell me how I get started. What are some good things for me to do? What are some bad things for me to do? What are the pitfalls of being in the market in the Southeast Michigan area?
Well, the first thing that I do during a preliminary interview is to talk to them what their goals are. Typically, I run into the clients anywhere from wanting volume to starting off with one or two investments and take it over the long term. The volume clients, we look for what return they're looking for and what their idea is of, if you were to vision their portfolio, what would it look like? I classify properties A, B, C, D. Mm-hmm. An A property is a $500,000 property that we lease for $5,000 a month to a property that is inner city, maybe is less expensive, rents at a much lower range. Mm-hmm. We have learned through the process that the C and D properties is typically what draws investors because it's a lower price.
Right.
That comes with penalties of if you have a D-class property in a D-class neighborhood, you're going to get D-class tenants, which means you don't worry so much about getting your rent paid on the first. Mm-hmm. You hope that they pay you in the same month that they owe you the rent.
Right.
So different things change.
Uh-huh.
Some investors, again, being detached from it, being overseas, that type of thing, they're maybe not so willing to stay ahead of a property. It's always a reactionary maintenance issue. Mm-hmm. Type of thing. And we prefer we inspect them frequently to try to advise the investor clients just how to stay ahead of a property. Mm-hmm. Type of thing.
So if somebody's looking to, let's just say they're looking for a 10-year investment, they're looking to get into real estate and they want to be in it for approximately 10 years. Okay. I know you mentioned A through D sort of
right?
Properties.
Correct.
What would you advise to somebody whose goal is, I want to get in and I want to get out in 10 years. I want to make some income, but ultimately I want to be able to sell the property and ultimately make my income in 10 years.
Okay.
How do you advise them?
Well, again, that all has to do with numbers, and you can work them backwards. Mm-hmm. What's their idea? Where are their investments now? Some people are in the market, some people are not. Some people are only in real estate. If they're only in real estate and they want a 10-year turnaround, we talk to them a little bit about what their expectations are as far as the return type of thing, because they're going to gain income two ways. One is the month-to-month cash flow, and then the overall appreciation of what they bought the property at versus what they can sell it at when they wish to take profits. Mm-hmm.
And that makes a lot of sense. Ultimately, I find that a lot of my investors, because in Ann Arbor, our prices are so much higher, they're looking at the appreciation and maybe getting some tax benefits for a short period of time.
Correct.
They're not looking for the immediate return.
Our political landscape has changed the real estate business a little bit. Mm-hmm. The new tax cuts are favorable for the investors now. So there's more than one way, or more than two ways, the two common of cash flowing and appreciation. There's now the tax benefits, several other items throughout the overall scope of things that can cause an investor to reap the reward.
Yeah. And I guess since you mentioned tax, what are the tax benefits of owning investment property?
Well, the tax benefits now are, one of the things that, first thing that I tell one of our investors when they call to introduce themselves is we're 100% deductible. Okay,
true.
as far as
That's very true.
right?
Yep.
So, people say, well, I don't want to pay a property manager because of this, the expense, the cost, that type of thing. Well, the first thing we get to do is write our services off. So, to be able to find and build a relationship with a good manager, to be able to advise you on the tax benefits. Again, we're real estate brokers. We don't go outside of our scope of expertise. I usually refer the clients to talk to their accounting people, their CPAs, to go from there. We happen to cultivate several CPAs that have foreign investment clients that refer them to us. They're coming from economies around the world that have little or no returns on their investments, any of their investments, whether it's the market, real estate type of thing. That's why they come here. And again, as you mentioned earlier, why they favor the Detroit market, because they know that the properties can be bought at lower prices.
Yeah, and it seems like we never have a shortage of tenants here, so it's always...
No, I would say that the rental market right now is at best, the best explanation is robust.
Yeah.
Very. The paradigm of real estate has changed.
Yeah.
From the American dream to owning, to now the millennials want a little bit more mobility.
Yeah.
On a shorter notice type of thing. So they're more willing to pay a higher rent for a nicer property that also gives them the ability to be able to resolve the real estate in a short term, to be able to move on for a new job down south, out west,
Right.
East Coast, that type of thing.
No, that makes sense. So I like to always, anytime I meet with my financial advisor, I always ask them, what's the risk of any investment that I'm going to do? Low risk to high risk. As an investor in Southeast Michigan, tell me what the low risk real estate investment, obviously it's a risk no matter what, but is there a low risk in real estate investing? And I guess then also talk to me and tell me what's the high risk.
Okay. Well, I would consider real estate investment as a business to be, in general, high risk.
Correct.
Okay.
I completely agree with you on that.
To be high risk. The only thing that I favor in real estate is you may run into a bad tenant, but the fact is you still have the deed.
Right.
Okay. So what we've learned over the last 10 years is we're now insuring against these type of predicaments. So there's several insurance products that are out there that will now insure the landlord or the investor client against rent interruption, excessive damage, liability, et cetera. So there's the products out there. But again, if that's an additional expense to the investor, they don't favor that. So what we've done is we've actually, we're in the process right now of coming up with a master insurance policy that we now require the tenants to participate in. And we charge them a very small service fee on a monthly basis that insures the owner at the tenant expense.
Interesting. That's really interesting. So I never heard of landlord coverage where they would cover, if there's any excessive damage, loss of income. How much are landlords paying for such an insurance policy?
Well, actually, there's our company is one of the very few in our market area that belong to NARPM, the National Association of Property Managers.
Yeah.
Okay, and through those contacts, we've met several investors and property managers, even from overseas. Australia and New Zealand seem to be almost a mimic of our markets. So this product that they had is called SureVestors, and it came from overseas. It's just only been introduced to this market in the last year or so, and it's very appealing. We happen to manage quite a few individual condominiums. And condominiums are where they really apply because the association is responsible for the drywall out, and the individual owner is responsible for the drywall in. Under that, we have a program that takes care of rent interruption, damage, all the way down to a total loss due to a fire or whatever, and they'll pay approximately $380 a year, which is substantially, it's 50% less than going out and getting a standard policy from one of, Allstate, Farm Bureau, insurance,
Definitely.
type of thing. So it's new to the market. We have introduced it to our clients. They were excited about it. Now with the new master policy of telling our owners, we have the tenants pay for the insurance to guard against risk of loss, they're really excited.
Wow, that's a game changer.
That's a real big game changer.
I've never heard, but it also will give investors a complete peace of mind. I shouldn't say complete, but a much bigger peace of mind.
There's still things on our end
right.
that we have to deal with, that, now we have to make an insurance claim and deal with insurance adjusters and that type of thing. So it might lengthen the time of getting a property turned around. But if it's on the insurance company's dime and not the investors are more than willing to.
So you mentioned, having an insurance policy against loss of rental income, maintenance, sort of big, properties destroyed sort of issues. Are there any insurance policies for tenants in the regards that, if they lose their job, have you ever heard of insurance policies like that that would support their rent?
Well, what I talked about earlier about the SureVestor that protects the investor owner against interruption of rents type of thing, I guess the tenant could also insure against that for the owner. They wouldn't really benefit other than paying the owner what they're owed and maybe reducing the risk of having an owner come talk to them legally type of thing. What we found initially in our leases is we were strongly, in bold caps in one of our paragraphs said that we strongly advise the tenant to obtain renter's insurance.
Right.
98.6% don't.
Right.
Okay, until it's an issue of something happens, water in the basement destroys possessions, fire type of thing, and it's always a bad conversation.
Right.
Okay, because we find out they didn't have it. That's why we've switched over. I network quite a bit. Was introduced to a gentleman by the name of Brad Larson out of San Antonio, and he was the one that introduced me through a podcast of doing a master policy that protects both the tenant and the owner at the tenant's expense. It's very economical. I think our fee is the insurance fee for a tenant is going to be $21 on a monthly basis.
That's great.
Yeah, I like to overcome objections before they're an objection.
Right.
Okay, at $21 they're covered. We just make it a requirement. We do have, I'm sure that we're anticipating having the occasional tenant object, but in our robust market, if they object, we apologize. They step aside, next prospect comes in.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Type of thing.
And so from a tenant standpoint, one of the concerns or one of the issues that I often get is, wow, well, I make a good living, but I'm cash poor, more or less is what oftentimes they tell me. It's, what I make every month, I end up spending every month. So the security deposit has become an issue for some tenants. And recently, one of the tenants that approached me said that they have almost a bond through this third-party company that they pay, and then they cover them in case there's any sort of shortage in the security deposit.
I want to say that I'm familiar with it. Again, it's come up in the podcast and the networking that we've done amongst other NARPM members, but I'm not totally sold on that or familiar with the deep detail.
Yeah. When somebody first told me that, it was a prospective tenant, there's a small part of me that thought, am I being scammed? just because it seemed a little, it just seemed a little weird that the tenant pays a small fee to this company that then offers them the security.
Well, it's like anything with insurance. I mean, they want to protect themselves about income.
Right.
They don't want to spend.
That's very
Okay.
true.
So they don't want to pay the claims. They just want to receive the premium.
Yeah.
So I guess time will tell.
If people watching this want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Is through our website at nelsonpm.com, or feel free to call me direct on my cell, 586-531-4825.
Great. Well, thanks so much. And by the way, I was on your website yesterday. It is a great resource.
No,
I
thank
found
you.
a lot of information about property management. So
Thank you, appreciate that.
thank you so much for being with us. And
All right.
thank you so much for joining us here on Sound Bites. I'm Alex Milstein, and we're in Detroit, Michigan.